Paul Cotter recently made history for the Devils, so let's talk about it. And Shimo Nemec not having a good sophomore year. What should the Devils do with him moving forward? We have a lot to break down in today's episode of Locked On Devils. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Elliott scores! Oh, Stevens stepped up, nailed him. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here at the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Chalky Play Announcer, Devils Wire Pucks Pitchforks, and also part-time Credential Me member, Trey Matthews. When this episode goes live, the New Jersey Devils are scheduled to play the Minnesota Wild yet again. This time, it will take place at the Prudential Center. I'm really looking forward to that matchup just because we saw what happened on Saturday in Minnesota. The Devils redeemed themselves after getting shut out by the Winnipeg Jets. It had a playoff atmosphere. Nico Hischier, he had a hat trick. Jonathan Kovacevic, he went toe-to-toe with Marcus Foligno. It had physicality. The Devils were dominant. They were scoring from start to finish. It was just a great game. And if you didn't catch my post-game recap episode, then please pause this episode and give it a listen. What's on the agenda for today's episode? Well, in the first segment, we're going to talk about Paul Cotter. He recently made Devils history, and I mentioned it briefly in the previous episode, but I want to give Cotter the spotlight because I know I've talked about his sporadic scoring production, but he is consistent in one area, and as a result, he broke a Devils record. Then in the second segment, we're going to have a tough discussion in regards to Shimo Nemec because I think it's safe to say Nemec's sophomore year in the NHL is a complete far cry from his rookie season last year. And Nemec might be on borrowed time. And depending on how the season pans out for him being traded away, I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. Then in the third and final segment, I hope your guys' March Madness brackets are doing well. I picked Alabama to win the entire tournament. I had a 99% bracket at one point. I was first in Daniel Moya's group. Unfortunately, Alabama lost badly to Duke. But why am I talking about March Madness? Well, the NCAA hockey tournament has been going on as well. The Frozen Four is set to take place in St. Louis in a few days. And one of the teams that will be participating in the Frozen Four are Jay Pandolfo and the Boston University Terriers. And who's on that roster? Oh, right. Highly touted Devils prospect, Mike Yegorov. I'm going to give you guys another Yegorov update because the past few months, it seems like he's become the favorite Devils prospect. Everyone is rooting for him. And with a few key teams eliminated from the tournament, I think Boston University has a golden chance to hoist the trophy at the end. All right, let's talk about Paul Cotter. Like I just said, the Devils picked up a big win on Saturday when they defeated the Wild 5-2 at Xcel Energy Center. With 7 games remaining, including one taking place later tonight, the Devils' playoff odds have increased to 99.3%. According to Money Puck, the magic number is 10. Barring a meltdown, knock on wood, fans should anticipate playoff hockey to be played at The Rock. I think it's safe to say that ever since the Christmas break, the Devils have endured a roller coaster experience. However, there are a few positives, including Jesper Bratt breaking Scott Stevens' single season assist record on March 22nd. However, another player also broke a record recently, but nobody's given it any attention. Paul Cotter, like I just said, currently has 232 hits, which is a Devils record for most hits in a single season. The previous record holder was Blake Coleman, who had 225 hits during the 2018-2019 season. Fun fact for you, Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt, and Stefan Nason are the only players remaining from that team. Cotter was acquired by the Devils last summer in a deal that saw Alexander Holtz and Akira Schmid sent to the Vegas Golden Knights. I remember when it took place, it was day 2 of the draft inside the Spear, terrible reception. And the name of the game for Devils in that offseason was to acquire more physicality. But people, including myself, felt as though that Fitzy gave up a little too much to get Cotter services. He is a Stanley Cup champion. I can't take that away from him, but Holtz is a former first-round selection. His name has been brought up in trade rumors before. I thought that the San Jose Sharks were going to demand for at least Holtz in order to get Timo Meier to New Jersey. Schmid helped the Devils march past the first round in the 2023 playoffs. Some people were initially perplexed with the trade, but it seems like Fitzy made a good deal. Cotter's had an interesting first year with the Devils. At the beginning of the season, he was scoring at a premium and was even a point per game player at one point, but we knew that wasn't going to last. Unfortunately, as the season has progressed, his point production has become sporadic. He had a rough stretch in which he didn't record a single point between November 12th and December 19th. That's how inconsistent the points have been for Cotter. His struggles later led him to be scratched against the Philadelphia Flyers on March 9th. It seems to have motivated him because he has scored 3 goals since then, including in the previous game against the Wild. It was a great goal. I talked about it in the prior episode, but Cotter's one consistent trait this season has been his ability to rack up hits. Even though he's not a prolific scorer, his willingness to throw his weight around makes him valuable. He's not a one-dimensional player like Holtz, and that's why I'm a little more forgiving if Cotter is not in the score sheet, because his job is to provide physicality. He skates really well. I love what he does with his mitts. Aside from scoring, Holtz struggled to contribute in other areas, which made it easier for then head coach Lindy Ruff to bench him. We already know how that went with the media, because people would ask Lindy, like, hey, why isn't Alexander Holtz playing in more shifts? Like, why is he benched? And Lindy would sometimes snap and say, you don't watch the game very well, but I digress. Even though people might have mixed feelings toward Fitzgerald, it's safe to assume that nobody misses Holtz or Schmidt, at least on my end. I think Cotter is a good player, provides physicality, and his scoring is a bonus. I said it early on in the year. I knew we weren't going to see his name atop of the Devils for most goals, assists, points, etc. In addition to his record-setting hits, Cotter currently has 16 goals, which isn't bad for a bottom 6 player. So I just wanted to give Cotter his flowers. He is in the history books in his first year with the Devils. He has Stanley Cup pedigree. Can't take that away from him. I don't know how people feel when it comes to Cotter, but on my end, he's been what he's been advertised, which is his scoring is a bonus. He's here to provide physicality, and he needs to work on being a little more consistent. Just wanted to give Cotter the spotlight for the time being. All right. Before we talk about Shimon Nemec, let me tell you guys about FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. Like I told you guys early on in the episode, I had picked Alabama to win the entire tournament, but now my bracket is officially busted. So I guess I got to revert to my old bracket of Florida possibly winning. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Please remember to always gamble responsibly. Okay, it's time that we have a discussion when it comes to Shimon Nemec. Now, I've talked about it in prior episodes, but they were brief talking points. Let's make this an entire segment, shall we? Let's look at his numbers. Games played, 23. He has 3 points, 1 goal, 2 assists. He has a plus minus rating of -8. Expected goals for rating, 9.8, which is 20th on the team. Expected goals against, 13.4, 20th on the team. I think Daniel Amoya of the Hockey Writers articulates it a little better than me. Here's what he published in a recent article. According to Natural Stat Trick, his 34.59 expected goals for percentage is the worst among 264 defensemen to play in the NHL this season. In just 21 games, the opposition has created 39 more scoring chances than the Devils when he's on the ice. He has been placed under scrutiny many times, especially after their contest on March 7th against the Jets. I'm going to talk about another recent outing against the Jets for Nemec because I think we all saw the Lowry goal, but digressing. Head coach Sheldon Keefe proclaimed the score in a 6-1 loss wasn't super indicative as to how the team as a whole played, starting with this quote. The youngest player on the ice had a real tough time tonight. Of course, that player was Nemec, who made 3 individual mistakes that led directly to goals. It seems like Nemec just has the worst luck against the Jets because remember the game from a few days ago? Adam Lowry just took the lunch money from Nemec and scored to make it a 4-0 game. Albeit the Devils weren't going to win that game either way, but still, it's like Nemec's head was down. He didn't know where he was at, and that was just poor puck control from Nemec, and that makes you rip your hair out. He has an offensive point share rating of 0.0 and a defensive point share rating of 0.3. So his point share rating is 0.3. If you thought the quote that I just read you was bad, Sheldon Keefe said that Nemec was in a different league after the second game that the Devils played against the Jets. Not really encouraging. Okay, let's look at the facts. Nemec is a former second overall selection. He was an AHL All-Star this year, and he focuses more on defense as opposed to offense. So I'm not really concerned with his offensive numbers. But his defense is not really anything special either. And this puts the Devils into a unique position because Nemec's future is looking a little murky, if you ask me. Because I know he wants a bigger role. I've shared this story before. But while Nemec was in the AHL, I had a source tell me that he wasn't too happy to be there. In fact, there was this whole drama in which a reporter asked Nemec about the possibility of being traded, and Nemec talked about it, and it caught whirlwind on social media. But I'll give Nemec the benefit of the doubt in that circumstance because my educated guess is that something got lost in translation, similar to what my boss, Nick Villano of Pucks and Pitchforks, also stated in our discussion. So I'll just brush that to the side. But the other sentiment doesn't change. During All-Star Game festivities in the AHL, Nemec didn't seem too fun to be in the AHL. And I get it because last year, I'd say he was one of the bigger surprises for the Devils. They dealt with a decent amount of injuries. Dougie Hamilton missed 75% of the season. Jonas Siegenthaler missed some time as well, which put a lot of pressure on the shoulders of both Nemec and Luke Hughes. Both of them impressed last year, if you ask me. But this year, Nemec has taken a few steps backwards. And I know there's still a lot of pressure on his shoulders. He recently turned 21. I'm not trying to say that his career is over or that he's going to be a bust. But here's what I am saying. Nemec really has to step up his game. Otherwise, the Devils are going to run him out of town. The Devils are projected to make the playoffs this year. Like I said in the first segment, knock on wood. He really needs to elevate his game for his sake. Because if he doesn't, then he's going to be traded over the offseason. No ands, ifs, or buts about it. Jonathan Kovacevic signed a 5-year extension with the Devils. What that tells me is that the Devils are going to move on from either Seamus Casey or Shimo Nemec, because you got players like Dougie Hamilton, Jonas Siegenthaler, Brett Pesce, and Brendan Dillon locked up for a long period of time. Adding Ethan Edwards, another highly touted Devils defenseman prospect, to the pool, that doesn't make things any easier. And a lot of people are saying that Fitzy needs to make a splashy move to help take the team to the next level. Well, you know what? The Devils are running a little thin when it comes to assets, but one asset they do have is Shimo Nemec. You could also consider Dawson Mercer, but I've already shared my thoughts when it comes to Mercer. I think you need to add someone to his line to possibly elevate his game, but that's a discussion for another time. My thoughts on the matter is that I think the Devils do need to trade away Shimo Nemec. I don't think he's going to be with the Devils come next year. Next season will be the final year of his entry-level contract. I don't see the Devils offering him a new deal. I see more potential in Seamus Casey, if you ask me. Now, let me make this perfectly clear. Casey is a great offensive weapon, but Sheldon Keefe has said this before, which is Casey really needs to improve defensively. So for Nemec, he needs to improve offensively if his defense is not really going to elevate that much. And for Casey, his offense is good. It seems like he has an electrifying goal every game he's in the lineup. But for the future, I think I see more potential in Seamus Casey, but he still has a lot of work to do. Don't get me wrong. Nemec is a former second overall pick, and maybe he was selected a little too high, but I kind of understood why the Devils didn't want to draft someone like Shane Wright or Logan Cooley, is because they already had a lot of young forwards in Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Dawson Mercer. Alexander Holtz was still within the organization. He was killing it in Utica. I see why the Devils lean toward a defenseman. That's just my opinion. You're more than welcome to disagree, but focusing on the now, Nemec needs to play better. I think he's going to get traded. I don't see the Devils keeping both Nemec and Casey. And what should the Devils do the rest of the year with Nemec? Should they just bench him? Should they continue to play him? Well, whether you like it or not, you're going to have to continue to play him because there aren't that many options behind him. Dougie Hamilton is out for the rest of the year. Same with Jonas Siegenthaler. Dennis Cholowski is awful. Daniel Sprong, I think people have mixed feelings toward him, but that's not really an upgrade if you ask me. Nemec is what you got. You got to work with what you're being given, and him being paired alongside Brendan Dillon, that certainly doesn't make things any easier. I think his time is starting to run out with the Devils, and this is something we're definitely going to talk more about come the offseason. Okay, like I said in the first segment, March Madness has taken over. I've created a couple brackets. I am currently in Daniel Amoya's March Madness group. Unfortunately, I went from 1st to 14th because I got 2 of my 4 final 4 predictions incorrect. But let's talk about hockey. Let's not talk about basketball. Let's focus on the NCAA Frozen Four. The Terriers are set to play Penn State on April 10th in the NCAA Frozen Four. Boston University competed in the Toledo regional of the tournament. They beat Ohio State 8-3. Yegorov got off to a slow start, but really elevated his game as the contest waned on. Then they beat Cornell 3-2, and Cornell had a big-time win against Michigan State. Cornell beat them at the last possible second. This is March. That was the quintessential of March Madness, and we haven't seen too many upset victories on the basketball side of things. Denver beat Boston College, but Keep in mind, Denver, they are the reigning national champions. But since they're the divisional rivals of Arizona State University, I don't want to see Denver win this tournament. But let's talk about Yegorov and what he did against Cornell. He stopped 37 of 39 shots in the 3-2 victory against Cornell to punch Boston University's ticket to the Frozen Four. Just incredible work from Yegorov. And in the game against Ohio State, he got off to a slow start. But even then, Yegorov's worst is still better than a lot of people's best, because he made 33 saves and he had a save percentage of .917. Incredible work from Big Mike. I just wanted to give you guys that update for one of the more popular Devils prospects. And it's just amazing that Yegorov came from a USHL team, the Omaha Lancers, that were pretty much a no-show this season. They were terrible. And then just a few months later, he's now at Boston University. They're in the Frozen Four. They're one of the best college teams in the entire nation, and they have a legitimate chance to win it all. For me, I just don't want to see Denver win just because they're rivals with my school, but making this about Mike Yegorov, everyone should be excited for him. And Jay Pandolfo told me last month that they're not in a rush to get him out of there. They want to keep him there as long as they can. Here's what I think they're going to do with Yegorov. I think we'll see Yegorov play for the Terriers once again next year. And then once their season ends, depending on how far they go in the tournament, we might see Yegorov sign his entry-level contract next year. Don't quote me on that, but that's where I think the direction is going to go with Yegorov, because he has grown so quick. He is taking his game to new heights, and we already know the amount of talent that comes out of Russia when it comes to goalies. I think Yegorov has a chance to be something really special in the not-so-distant future. Maybe we'll see him with Utica next season. We've been talking about it in the Pucks and Pitchforks group chat. I don't even think he needs to go to the ECHL, but we'll see what happens. Just wanted to give you guys that update. But let me know your thoughts. What do you think of Paul Cotter? How would you assess his season? On the one end, he's very physical, but on the other end, his offense is sometimes tough to come by. And what do you think the Devils should do with Shimon Nemec? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on podcast streaming service, hit me up on my personal X Page app at TrainMatt4 or the show's X Page app at Locked On Devils. As for today's episode, that's all the time I have for you. Continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day, New Jersey. Go Devils. I'll catch you guys next episode. Thanks for listening once again.